Hi everyone, welcome to the second segment of our event on reparations, debt, and climate justice. This part of the segment will be hosted by Fridays for Future MAPA and Transnational Accountability and Justice Initiative. And in this segment, we're going to emphasize the relationship between the violent colonial pursuits of the global north and the climate crisis, contextualize climate reparations, and confront the way that the global north routinely uses climate reparations as a form of business and as a means to gain profit. With us here, we have activists from Fridays for Future MAPA, which means most affected people and areas, who will answer a series of questions on the topic. And this is also going to be a hybrid event. So we have one speaker who is with us here live on Teams. And then we also have Nole, who couldn't make it here, but she has recorded some video answers. So before we start, we just wanted to recognize that this has been one of the most exclusive COPs because of, for example, the UK's racist immigration policies, vaccine apartheid, etc. And a lot of key voices have been excluded from the conversation here at COP. But we will start our event with some introductions, and yeah, give a round of applause for MAPA.
Hello, my name is Regina Carrera Batista. I'm an anti-racist and colonial feminist. I live in Mexico, and I'm also an activist that fights for climate justice at Fridays for Future Mexico and Fridays for Future MAPA.
Ella es Regina Cabrera, es una activista de colonial y feminista, vive en Ciudad de México, forma parte de Fridays for Future México y de Fridays for Future MAPA. Oh, and I am Name Villa del Ángel. I am part of Fridays for Future Mexico and MAPA as well. I am autistic, so I'm not just like a climate activist, but a disability justice activist. Yeah, I'm also believe like in creating new narratives, like positive narratives to construct like new ways of seeing like climate change and the climate crisis. So I consider myself a solar punk, and yeah, that's what I have to say about me.
Hola, mi nombre es Name Villa del Ángel, también soy una activista climática. También, aparte de ser activista, también soy autista, entonces también lucho por el derecho de las personas con discapacidad. Y pues aparte de todo esto también creo en una postura solar punk.
Hi, my name is Eric Njuguna. I'm a youth climate activist from Nairobi, Kenya. I just came here for COP26, my first time to ever be in Europe, and I definitely have a lot to say about my first experience here. And just even in relation to what we'll be talking about today, and can't wait to hear from you and also learn together.
Hola, soy Eric, vengo de Nairobi, Kenia. Tengo muchas cosas que decir sobre este lugar, sobre esta mi primera experiencia en una COP en Glasgow. Y todo el tipo de cosas que vamos a hablar en este panel sobre los temas que hablaremos aquí.
Hello, I'm Farzana Farooq Jhumo. I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and I'm a part of Fridays for Future Bangladesh and Fridays for Future MAPA, and I will be the one who asks the question to the panel today.
Ella es Farzana, viene de Bangladesh, forma parte de Fridays for Future MAPA y Fridays for Future Bangladesh, y seré quien hace las preguntas de este panel.
My name is Nonhle Senene, and I'm a 14-year-old climate and social justice activist from South Africa. The work I do around activism includes education around climate change and raising awareness around the importance of climate justice and how we need climate justice in the overall fight against the climate crisis. I also work in various climate projects which help empower Global South activists and Global South voices, as well as, again, raising awareness on the importance of climate justice. My name is Noki.
Hola, mi nombre es Namle, soy una activista de Sudáfrica quien trata de hacer educación sobre la crisis climática. Mis principales temas es hablar sobre justicia climática y cómo esta afecta a diferentes países del sur global, y me enfoco mucho en resaltar sobre cómo se pueden hacer activismo a favor de la justicia climática.
Oh, that's really cute. It's fine. Everyone, it's very early in the morning. It's very early in the morning in Malaysia right now. My name is Nadia. I'm from Kuala Lumpur. I'm a feminist, also a climate justice activist, and I'm the current chairperson of Climate Action Malaysia. It's nice to meet everyone here today. I think it's the first time having to see this space, because we're also gonna have an event here tomorrow. So really, really thrilled.
Hola, soy Nadia, estoy muy emocionada de estar aquí, también de un evento que voy a esta mañana, estoy muy emocionada de estar aquí.
Okay, so I will start with we have a big audience, and due to COVID, many seats are empty, but there are more audience with us in the live stream. So there are audience who wanted to know but don't know much about climate reparation. How will you explain climate reparation to them, and what form they are coming in?
Probablemente hay muchas personas en este evento que son nuevos hacia este tema, y por esto queremos preguntar cómo ustedes explicarían las reparaciones climáticas para las personas que no saben y en qué formas pueden llegar a presentarse.
Climate reparations are the debt that the global north owes to the global south due to the historical contribution to the climate crisis. Also important for these climate reparations to be anti-racist. The global south are suffering the most to the climate crisis, yet have contributed the least to the climate crisis. Along with climate reparations, it also includes acknowledgement of the global north's historical contribution to climate change and how the global south is suffering because of it. An example of a form of climate reparations, for example, is suing companies and corporations responsible to contributing to the climate crisis as well as climate destruction. Another example is also adaptation funds to the global south. We're already seeing how bad the climate crisis is affecting the global south and the need for adaptation funds to navigate the current situations in regards to climate change happening within the global south.
Las reparaciones climáticas son aquellas que, afectan primero más a los países del sur global, y son para ellos las reparaciones climáticas. Tiene que ver mucho con justicia climática y cómo estas se van dando poco a poco. También hablo que puede ser de diferentes formas, pero siempre enfocándose en la justicia climática.
Well, I will describe climate reparations as a way of making justice during the climate crisis, but I will not describe it as a synonym of climate debt or loss and damage, you know? I think climate reparations goes beyond the monetary way of thinking, goes beyond a capitalist framework. So even if debt cancellation is part of reparations, also some stuff just as land back and the end of inequality and decolonization in general are part of climate reparations. I will also say that climate reparations can be understand if you don't think about them inside the frame of decolonization. So yeah, a lot of times you hear people talk about reparations in the sense of the global north paying to the global south, and yeah, that is part of reparations, but also I will say that climate reparations are as well payment from the upper classes and the political classes and the state in general to the people below the colonial and capitalist system, you know? So, yeah, I will like describe reparations to the people by saying that 92% of all the emissions historically have been emitted by the global north, but also the 1% of the population right now emits 2 times the contamination that the 50% of the people of all the world that are the poorest, you know? But not also that. The 1% also pollutes 30 times the percentage that they have in the, you know, what the earth can sustain, you know, 30 times, and 8 times if you count the other 10% of the riches, you know. So it isn't sustainable. That's why in Fridays for Future Mexico we talk about how reparations can be solved if we don't talk about decolonization, but also about degrowing the economy for the people that lives in the north, but especially for the people that are the upper classes, the 1%. Y en español se os explicaría como que las reparaciones se pueden entender como una manera en la cual, mediante una forma de pensar la justicia climática, se le tiene que pagar de cierta forma a las personas que están siendo más dañadas por la crisis climática, pero no deberíamos de creer que las reparaciones son lo mismo que la cancelación de la deuda, que la deuda ecológica o que las pérdidas y daños. Si bien las pérdidas y daños, la cancelación de la deuda es muy importante, las reparaciones van más allá de esto, pues van más allá de un marco conceptual hipermonetizado, ¿saben? Van más allá de pagar monetariamente a leotre, van más allá de una forma de pensar de manera capitalista alrededor de este tema, y por lo tanto muchas formas en las cuales se podría también pensar las reparaciones es conforme a land back, a devolverle a los pueblos su tierra, autonomía de los pueblos, y también conforme, por ejemplo, eliminar la desigualdad, etcétera, etcétera. También muchas veces se piensa que las reparaciones son del norte al sur, y sí, pero también vienen muchas veces de las clases altas a las clases bajas, así debería de ser. El 92% de todas las emisiones históricas han venido del norte global, pero también el 1% de la población emite el doble que el 50% más pobre. Y no nada más eso, sino que también el 1% más rico a nivel global emite 30 veces lo que es lo justo en su pieza de pastel a nivel global de lo que soporta la Tierra.
Thank you. Any of you wanna answer? And Nadia also.
Okay, I guess the question. So, what are climate reparations and what form they can come on? I think we all know definitely the climate reparation should come in the most important form of climate finance, and I think this is something that a lot of in the global south are in need, and this has been a really huge and complex process. Even negotiation table, I think there's a lot of delaying tactics that's being used by the global north, and I think from what we have listened to what ED and the rest has mentioned early on, it's very clear to see that the climate reparations must be tied into the just transition. It must tie into the people and planet first. So most of the pledges that we have seen actually at COP at the moment is very profit driven and still profiteering at at this particular junction where we are facing multiple tipping points. I think it's not right. It's ignoring historical responsibility. And yeah, I think I'm going to talk much about that later on if I have the chance. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. We actually saw a huge demonstration on November 5th and November 6th in the road, and all of us were asking for climate justice. So my question is like, I'm sorry, we need a translation first.
Ella también mencionó sobre el financiamiento climático y cómo, al igual que Nami, no se limita a ello. También habló de que las reparaciones climáticas tienen que venir, del norte global al sur global, especialmente a las personas más afectadas y a las que ya están siendo afectadas. Habló, por supuesto, de que se está hablando de ello ahora en la COP y que los días, me parece, 5 y 6 de noviembre hubo manifestaciones aquí para hablar de ello, y que también tenemos que poner atención a lo que están haciendo porque no siempre empiezan a hablar del tema, pero no siempre con la visión con la visión de justicia climática que se está buscando.
As I was saying, we as climate activists want climate justice. So, as climate activists, why do climate reparation matters to climate justice? Maybe Eric, you can say.
Why do climate reparations matter in climate justice? I think so many people think that our work on climate justice is about lowering emissions and that's it. And I think I can quote Kumi Naido, who says that all work is climate work, but not all climate work can be climate justice work. And so how does debt cancellation work go into climate justice? I think climate justice is movements about climate justice center the voices of the most affected people and areas, and they bear the reality of what the climate crisis means to them. It's not about lowering carbon emissions only. It's about the people who are most affected to come out stronger when at least in solving the climate crisis. And at a point when climate catastrophes hit in our own countries, we need a way that it's not adding burden to our own lives, and that is exactly what climate finance is doing by creating more debt than we can already manage, considering that we already have so many debts in our own countries. So we live in a time where we need to dismantle our own worldview and rebuild it in the image of what history actually looks like. And that would mean decolonizing our work in climate justice, and that is also decolonizing climate finance, because we need to realize the historical role global north countries have in causing the climate crisis, and need to realize that this is not lending us some money because we didn't have, while it's not putting in consideration why we didn't have in the first place, or why this catastrophes are happening in our own countries in the first place. So we need to look at this objectively and make it more about decolonizing climate finance, because the most affected people and areas need to have less burden in a crisis that they didn't create in the first place. The quality of conversation in climate finance at the moment is astounding. at a time when climate is still being talked about a lot. And it's issues on decolonizing climate finance are not being talked about as much. And as people who have been affected by the climate crisis in so many ways, it's aggravating to see that climate finance, the conversation on climate finance right now, is a conversation that will just add more burden to what we are going through at this moment.
Justicia climática no tenemos que limitarnos solamente a hablar de emisiones, sino que tenemos que hablar de cuestiones más profundas y cómo ya la crisis climática está afectando a personas y áreas en distintas partes del mundo. Y esto también tiene que ver en cómo las negociaciones y el discurso sobre, por ejemplo, el financiamiento climático se está llevando a cabo, porque está siendo otra herramienta más en la que se utiliza el dinero para pues mantener bajo control a las personas, siguiendo con cuestiones de crédito, por lo que debemos decolonizar el financiamiento climático, no solamente el financiamiento climático, sino otros temas climáticos, pero en este específicamente hablando de reparaciones, tenemos que hablar de cómo el financiamiento climático se está utilizando no para las personas, sino para el dinero. Y que incluso el financiamiento climático se está utilizando para dañar a las personas y no para protegerlas de la crisis climática.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Reparations play an important role in climate justice because it is the global north paying their debts to the global south for the historical contributions to the climate crisis. We have seen and we are seeing that the global south is suffering the most due to the climate crisis, yet are the least contributors to the crisis. We can see that the global north cannot move to a green state while the global south is unable to, and this also shows the importance of climate reparations, that everybody needs to be included when moving to a green state and nobody should be left behind.
Las reparaciones climáticas también sirven para que no solo el norte global pueda adaptarse a las consecuencias del cambio de la crisis climática, sino que no se deje a nadie atrás y el sur global también pueda hacer frente a la crisis climática que ya está sucediendo.
We saw that when the activists were in the road and the leaders were in the warm room negotiating, some other people also have something to say, like businessmen and NGOs and fossil fuel companies. So who do you think should be in the process of decision making when it is talking about climate reparation?
Thank you. Well, we are here.
Translate first so that it's easy for everyone.
La pregunta es, ¿quién crees que debería estar en el proceso de hacer las decisiones sobre las reparaciones climáticas?
Thank you.
Well, I think what we've been saying as Fridays for Future MAPA is that we are here at COP and we are seeing all these white old men talking about what we need as most affected people in areas of the climate crisis.
Lo que hicimos como Fridays for Future MAPA es que estamos aquí en la COP no a escuchar a esos hombres blancos idiotas que vienen a hablar de nuestros problemas.
So what we are saying and what we are marching for is that climate reparations and all about climate crisis has to live by the people. We have to have power to the people. The people has to lead all the discussions about climate crisis.
Así que lo que decimos y por lo que marchamos es que la gente es quien tiene que liderar las negociaciones y quien tiene que tomar las decisiones sobre las reparaciones climáticas y en general todos los temas.
Because if it affects the historically oppressed people of the global south and the global north, they have to be ahead on the conversation and their voices have to be heard.
Porque las personas oprimidas, tanto del norte global como del sur global, porque como son las afectadas, tienen que ser escuchadas y tienen que tomar las riendas de las conversaciones.
Only the people has to lead this conversation, no other people.
Solo las personas son quienes tienen que liderar estas conversaciones, nadie más.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Just to add on that, mine is nothing different. I think that the most affected people from the most affected people and areas voices bear the reality of what the climate crisis means to them, because it affects us every single day back at home. And that is why our voices need to be on the decision-making table. At this time, the people who are on the decision-making table, the white men, the world leaders, the system has created a huge disconnect between what they are advocating for, what their interests are, versus the reality, what humanity is. So they're there on the decision-making table to advance their own capitalist interests, their own colonialist interests, because they don't want to see that, you know what, this is our own doing, and that is why this needs to be reparations instead of like the other political businesses where we're just creating, debt to, or like loaning another country. That is why I think that the system having created this huge disconnect, I don't believe that this conversation can be any bit successful if the voices of the people who haven't benefited from this privilege of being on the capitalism, colonialism, or even white privilege, able, because privilege is privilege in my own definition is something that is not a problem because it's not a problem to them, and it's not a problem to them because climate change doesn't affect them. They don't know that it's their own doing themselves because it's not a problem. So that is why MAPA people should be on the front line even of this movement, as is should be on the people making the decisions.
Eric habló de cómo las personas más afectadas son quienes deberían liderar estas conversaciones. Sin embargo, son estos hombres blancos con visión capitalista quienes lo están haciendo, y es por eso que es un gran problema. Además de que mientras ellos sean quienes estén al frente de las negociaciones y al frente de estas pláticas dentro de la conferencia, no va a haber un cambio real, y pues que se tiene que tener a las personas que están sufriendo la crisis climática al frente de estas conversaciones.
All right, I think this is my turn. Yes, I think. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Definitely, community leaders, especially women, should be in the decision-making process for climate reparations. I say that because women, they are the most burdened by the impacts of climate change. It's disproportionate from psychological stress, distress, and post-disaster effects to the escalation of domestic abuse in shared disaster shelters. We've heard this, we've seen this, and some of us might have experienced this. So women are continued to be excluded in rebuilding efforts and climate disaster response planning, which exacerbates the existing gender inequalities. I think, for example, I'd just like to share some few things. When this is something that I read when there was an earthquake that hit India back in 2001, the rebuilding planning didn't include women in the discussion. Therefore, they built houses without any kitchens. I know it's a structural thing, women in the kitchen, but a kitchen is really important to the house to feed the family. And then back last year, when the pandemic hit, we realized that the COVID-19 aid that was being given to indigenous communities, rural women, does not include sanitary pads, family and hygiene products, even medications, due to the failure to include women in disaster emergency response. And after Hurricane Katrina, it wasn't long until stories of violence and rapes and beatings started to circulate. And of course, there's the deteriorating mental health. So why women? I mean, women usually are first responders. In our Malaysian experience, during the first wave of COVID-19, women are the first to build collectives on the ground with the grassroots, using Facebook at that time, because we can't meet with each other, to centralize aid when the government around us, all agencies are failing and the supply chain was broken. It is easy to see why empowered women not only take care of themselves, they also take care of their family, also communities. I think gender intervention must be an important component when building frameworks for climate reparation. So this is why I think women should be at the forefront, should be at the decision-making process for climate reparations.
Habló de las experiencias diferenciadas, especialmente después de desastres, en la respuesta ante desastres, especialmente de las experiencias de las mujeres y cómo ellas son ignoradas cuando se está un proceso de recuperación de sus comunidades, y pues cómo ellas tienen que también estar al frente de las decisiones que se están tomando y de las negociaciones y de las pláticas que se están teniendo, y cómo el ignorarlas puede llevar pues a esas exclusiones. Obviamente esa exclusión causa más que otra vez no se vean que no se escuchen sus voces, y por eso son ellas también quienes tienen que estar al frente de estas pláticas.
I also wanted to add that what's the context, the historical context is in this moment. In this moment, the biggest polluters of all the world are financing the COP26. Also, the FMI and the World Bank, the Monetary Fund, how do you say it in English? The IMF and the World Bank, right now are colonial institutions in which one vote of every person in the global north means 8 votes of 8 different people from the global south. So right now, there is an apartheid at these institutions that make the decisions for how the economics of all the global south will be made. So if we really want climate justice and if we really want reparations, we need to or reform these institutions, or if we can't reform them, well, replacing them.
Quería agregar más sobre el contexto histórico en el que estamos, que es que los mayores contaminantes del mundo son quienes están en el financiamiento climático. Hablo específicamente del Banco Mundial y del Fondo Monetario Internacional, y cómo esos organismos siguen reproduciendo los mismos patrones que ya conocemos, y por eso, si van a seguir así, tenemos o que reformarlos o que cambiarlos por otros organismos que sí sirvan.
We all can see we have a loud voice for climate reparation. So, do you think climate reparation can be misused? And if yes, how it can be misused?
La pregunta es cómo podrían ser las reparaciones climáticas usadas de una manera mala, como usarlas mal.
I think when we talk about climate reparations, it's important to make the point that climate reparations are not charity, because world leaders take it that way.
Cuando hablamos de reparaciones climáticas tenemos que darnos cuenta de que no estamos hablando de caridad, porque los líderes globales lo hacen de esta manera, hablan de las reparaciones de esta manera.
Is an historical debt that the global north have with the global south, and that the global north have with the historically oppressed people from the global north also.
Es una deuda que el norte global tiene con el sur global y que el mismo norte global tiene con las personas oprimidas del norte global.
So it's important to clarify that there are no charity. It's not like, oh, for global south, we have to give them like a little bit of money, we have to give them this. It's not. It's climate justice.
Por lo que tenemos que decir que no es caridad, no es decir, oh, pobre sur global, vamos a darle un poco de dinero, sino que es justicia climática.
Thank you.
Gracias.
I think the argument on misusement of funds is an argument that global north countries use because there is corruption in the global south or something like that. So that is a key question that is raised by global north countries, like, oh, what if we give Nigeria funds, or what if we give this country funds? And I would pose a question. When I am driving and I'm on the wrong side of the road and then I hit your car, it will be my problem, right? So I have to pay you. But when I'm paying you because it's my problem, do I ask, how will you use that money? You will use that money on drinking, right? Yeah? That is not a question that people ask, you know? So that is the same thing. This question comes from a point of they have not realized that, you know, it's their fault in the first place. It's not charity, as Ray said there. So that is my opinion where it comes from. So I don't feel like that question would come up if it came from a point of recognizing their own role in causing the climate crisis in global south countries. Thank you.
Habló de cómo los países del norte global a veces pues, hablan de la corrupción en nuestros países del sur global. Sin embargo, nos invitó a dar una nueva visión en la que, por ejemplo, cuando chocan un coche y la otra persona tiene la culpa, la persona que chocó no le pregunta a la persona que fue chocada en qué va a utilizar el dinero para reparar su automóvil, simplemente se lo da. Y desde una visión en la que las personas afectadas son quienes están al centro, no importaría la opinión del norte global en cómo se va a utilizar este dinero.
Can she hear us?
Nadia, you're on mute, I think. Nadia, can you hear us?
She's talking.
Okay, maybe Nana, you can go first, and then I'll go.
Well, what I wanted to say is that for this COP26, countries like India, like Mexico, like Argentina, talked about reparations, or at least about debt cancellation, and about loss and damage. But at the same time, these countries have a government that are very, 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 very corrupt. And if maybe that doesn't mean that the global north has to just ignore them or ignore the global south because of this, it does mean that the climate reparations also the debt cancellation, the loss and damage, the climate finance, has not to go to the local governments or local state-owned institutions, but it has to go directly to the communities. If we don't think about reparations, again, outside of the state, the nation-state framework and the capitalist framework, we will never be able to actually reparate anything. Because, all the things that reparations are trying to reparate are the colonialism and the capitalism that for centuries have damaged all the people from all these territories. If we don't think about reparations inside of the framework of the colonization, we can't think about it at all. So, how can we actually resolve the problem of reparations? Giving it to the communities outside of the monetary, outside of the state framework. How? By giving power to the communities, political power, social power, land back, and so on.
We know where the responsibility for the climate crisis lies, with the global north and their colonial pursuits. In recognition of this, we are currently working on a project which will formally demand recognition and climate reparations from the global north for the suffering they have caused the global south before an international body. Further details about this project will be released in the new year, but be sure to follow Fridays for Future MAPA and the climate activists speaking here today so that you don't miss the steps and how to support this action.